How do I do it all? The Brezza gives me the power.
Tournament on the line for both Afghanistan and England, and that's what makes this game one to look out for in the ICC Men's Champions Trophy 2025. We build up to the game at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. Here on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricket for Match Day. Yesterday's rain-washed game might actually work in favour of both Hashmatullah Shahidi as well as Jos Buttler's teams, and we will look ahead to that with, shall I say, a nervous Nick Knight. He's left the country. He doesn't want to be involved in case England once again fail to make the semis. So he's in France and he's joining us, as is Urooj Mumtaz. Where the action is, he doesn't want to miss it at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. Nick, come on, you're not nervous.
I'm petrified. I'm absolutely petrified. I've come to France because if England don't win, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but if they don't win, I think I might get away with it wandering around here. They're not so big on cricket here in France. What a day, though. I mean, there's so much at stake, isn't there, for both sides?
Yep, absolutely. You might just not go back to the UK, just take the flight to our part of the world. There's PSL and IPL, where of course you've worked with the lovely Urooj Mumtaz before. And Urooj, what's it like at the Gaddafi Stadium? Please tell me there's no rain like we unfortunately witnessed at Rawalpindi yesterday.
Well, the forecast says about 40% rain, but I don't think they've got their math right. It doesn't look like it's going to come in. And if it does, it might come in just slightly, maybe towards the evening. But at the moment, there was a bit of a cloud cover. That's also gone away, slight breeze. It's actually quite lovely outside.
Excellent. Tell me something. I mean, I know we're not too far, we're neighbouring countries and all that, but my weather knowledge is useless. Is it supposed to rain in Pakistan this time of year?
Well, Rawalpindi slightly because it comes over the mountains of the Margala Hills and stuff, but not really. So yesterday was unfortunate, but I don't think the rain's going to bother us too much.
All right. That hopefully is the last that we discuss the weather today, because there is so much that we want to talk about, not just in terms of what we can expect on the field between England and Afghanistan, but the storylines and the tensions that have led to this tournament in itself when it comes to the stance of the teams playing each other. We'll come to that in a second, but let's remind you, this is no easy game for England. Afghanistan did beat them in the 2023 ODI World Cup in Delhi. It was a comprehensive win. It kick-started Afghanistan's dream campaign in India, where they went on to then even beat Pakistan. They could easily have beaten Australia in that thrilling game in Mumbai. But Nick, England and Jos Buttler would remember the memories of Delhi in 2023 when 284 was more than enough, and 8 wickets between the Afghan spinners Rashid, Mujib, Nabi left England's World Cup defence in tatters.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as you want to sort of try and, from an English perspective, put that to one side and ignore it, it will be in the minds, of course, of both sets of players. I mean, I think you've got to be realistic, though, Raunak. I mean, the conditions are slightly different. Where I think that Potler in India, I mean, ball was turning. You know, here in the Gaddafi Stadium, it's not such a pleasant place to bowl spin. England played spin pretty well in the last game against Zampa. England will look to rotate the strike. I think 6 players played in that game that you just mentioned that are going to play today. I think 8 played from Afghanistan, 6 from England. So there's a bit of rotation going on there. But yeah, I think from Afghanistan's point of view, it had wider context, actually, that win. As much as you want to focus on England, I think it's given them huge self-belief that they can win games more regularly, whether it be England or someone. I think they've come into this tournament. I know they were disappointing in the first game, but I think they've come into this tournament genuinely believing that they're not just going to be kind of surprising sides. They genuinely believe they can win these matches now.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good point, because a number of our panelists did have Afghanistan in the semi-finals, in the semi-final predictions before the tournament. It might just do them a little disservice. The point Nick makes about what's Afghanistan's strength and the use of their spinners, they perhaps would have picked maybe Karachi to play these games rather than Lahore. Does that just reduce their threat to a certain degree, Urooj?
Yeah, I think across the 3 venues, probably Karachi would be most favourable, where the ball just holds and did hold and turn a little bit. But the wicket out here again looks 350. And that's probably what is different from that game against Delhi that you mentioned again between the two sides. The spin effect or the spin trio of Afghanistan might be neutralized ever so slightly. And that I think that just gives England a slight advantage. As far as Afghanistan are concerned, they'll want to bat first and put runs on the board. That seems to be the template that works for them. where Gurbaz and Zadran and the middle order, even Gulbuddin Naib has been in phenomenal form. Rehmat Shah got a 90 odd the other day. So if they can put runs on the board, I don't know what's happened at the toss yet, but the spin definitely just creates a slight gulf in England's favour.
I mean, anytime anyone mentions Gulbuddin Naib, the first image is not of him batting or bowling. It just is that image will stay forever now, of just Naib's leg being cut into half when there's some rain around, and maybe that'll come back into play today. In all seriousness, that's exactly what's happened at Lahore, what Urooj Mumtaz has said. Afghanistan have won the toss. They're batting first. That is their strength. That's how they won in Delhi. Nick, but is this such a bad toss result for England? They may not mind chasing?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because without being at the ground and obviously following what happened in the last game very closely, inevitably we start talking about due because it did have an impact on the game. I think that's a big decision from Afghanistan because, for a couple of reasons. One, clearly it's their strength, and I think they've probably done the right thing. You can't come into this game to worrying too much about the opponents. You've got to back your own strength. So from that point, I totally get it. Where it might be a little tricky is, if they concentrate naturally on their spinner, it gets very dewy later on. That is going to be a real problem for them. So that would be the conundrum that they've kind of weighed up. But I do think, as I go back to what I said earlier, I do think you've got to do what you think is right. Rather than focus too much on the opponents, and I think they've done that.
Yeah, I think it looks like they've also set themselves what they wanted to do in this tournament, regardless of what conditions on the day are. Urooj, is it fair to say? You said there's a little bit of weather around, maybe some cloud. England wouldn't mind bowling first. We saw the dew, but Afghanistan have in some ways ignored all that and just stuck to what their plan would have been pre-tournament?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a catch-22 situation where whether you sort of weigh the pros and cons of what the opposition brings, or you stick to your strengths and don't rely too much on the ifs and buts. And I think Afghanistan is at that phase in the transition of their ODI cricket or the international cricket where I think they need to believe in what their strengths are. And I think from the template that they play, they get big runs on the board as they did back in 2023. Their bowlers can come into the party. Fazl Farooqi, Azmatullah Umar, I thought was phenomenal with the ball. We're talking about the ifs and buts, and why I say that because with the cloud cover and slight wind blowing across the past 2 days, hasn't seen any dew in Lahore. So if the situation remains the same, it actually might work in Afghanistan's favour.
All right, so many factors, so many things that make this contest even more intriguing, especially with the stakes involved. The loser goes out of the running for the semi-finals, and England need to play their best team. Did they know what their best side was in that game against Australia? Did they end up going with the team that could perhaps be the same? Now, Jamie Overton has come in. We know Bradton Cass is ruled out for the entire tournament. It was interesting, Nick, that they replaced Cass with another spinner in the form of Rehan Ahmed, but Overton is the only change they make. Your thoughts?
I think it's probably the right choice. My concerns with this England side are the same as it was when they picked their game against Australia. I'm concerned about the bowling option, albeit the fifth bowling option actually performed pretty well. But what the fifth bowling option provides is if one of your bowlers, and it happened to be Bryden, clearly not at his best physically, underperforms, Josh Buttler hasn't really got much else he can do. I wonder what happens in this game when they get to South Africa, where they might be a little bit. My other concern with this side, and I talked about this in the previous show, Josh Buttler's batting too low for me. I really strongly feel that. I mean, they've got to be a bit more flexible with that. They had an opportunity in the last game when they had that big partnership between Root and Duckett, and then Harry Brook came in. Don't get me wrong, Harry Brook is a mighty fine, world-class player. But Josh Buttler's your best player in your team. He's one of the best of all time. He has to spend as much time at the crease as possible. That is something you're going to have to manage a little bit better.
Do you sense, on that point, that Butler batting in the middle is designed more for chases, and therefore perhaps today they might be happy with how things have gone at the toss?
I don't see it being as complicated as that, Raunak. I just see it as being simplistic. You've got your best player. When you look at these things, you look at it from an opposition perspective. Afghanistan, Australia in the first game. They look at that England lineup and they're thinking Josh Buttler. One of the first players they go to is Josh Buttler. Oh, he's at number 6. Now, if we can keep him out of the game as long as possible, might be 20 overs, might be 30 overs, we're winning. We're in a better position. He's their best player. We're keeping their best player out of the contest for as long as possible. That's what England got to be a little bit wary of, whether they bat first or second.
All right. Well, there's also a strange conundrum with Josh Buttler and his record in Asia. Fine player that he is, mighty fine player and successful in the IPL, so we know he can get runs here. But somehow in ODI cricket, it's not quite worked just the same for England's captain. We're going to break that down in a little more detail in Cricket Informed. Let's see what Nick Knight and Urooj Mumtaz make of these numbers. He's such an important player to England's chances. And ODIs in Asia since 2023, average of 22.7. Outside Asia, no problems whatsoever. Nick, maybe you can take the lead on this.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you try and dissect these numbers, you can get very forensic about it. My thoughts are a couple of things, really. One, I think he's got a... In T20 cricket, obviously a lot of the time in Asia, as you rightly say, and I mentioned in the preview show, he's got an outstanding record. IPL, he hits big hundreds. You know, one thing with Josh is he likes to give himself 5 or 10 balls to get in, get set. So I refer back slightly to his batting position. I think the higher up he bats, the more likely that average and strike rate will go up because he'll have more influence on the game and he'll have more time to get in. I mean, the other thing is, you know, I think we got some numbers on him when bowlers bowl length at him and back of a length in Asia. That is the place to bowl. Whether it's Josh Buttler, whether it's Travis Head, whether it's Virat Kohli, whether it's Babar Azam, that is the place to bowl. So don't be surprised if your weaker numbers are in that zone. Every time it goes slightly short, the numbers go if you look at it quite forensically, my thoughts are I don't think he's worried about those numbers at all.
Sure, but...
And it is only a matter of time before he puts those numbers right a little bit and gets back to somewhere near his best form.
All right. I'm sure Afghanistan, though, would be talking those numbers up, Urooj. And as we break them down even further, what their plans could be potentially. I think Nick's point is well illustrated in where Buttler, when he's not settled, at times when bowlers bowl back of a length or length, that's when they get him. And there's a lot of fast bowling, a lot of pace bowling that leads to the downfall of Buttler. Afghanistan's mode of attack usually isn't that.
Yeah, I think the one bowler that Afghanistan do have that is of that back of length, hit that length hard, is actually Azmatullah Umar, which probably bowls towards the late stage where Josh Buttler might come in. So if you single out a matchup there, that could be one. But on this surface, honestly, I don't think anybody's worried about what length you bowl. You just got to keep hammering down that good length, just back of length, and ask the batter and try and squeeze up as much line as possible because these surfaces are flat. They're batting paradises. But I think Nick is absolutely right. I mean, you give your best player the most chance in the game, the biggest opportunity in the game. And if he's batting 6, those numbers aren't going to go up because obviously more often than not, he'll be coming late because of the depth and quality England have in their batting lineup. So I think when Josh does come in, depending on the situation of the game, I don't think on this particular surface, unless you're very, very disciplined, any of these numbers should bother him.
Nick has obviously voiced his opinion on where he thinks Buttler should bat. Urooj, what are your thoughts?
Well, I see the thing with England is that obviously how far can they push Harry Brook, Joe Root, Jamie Smith? Now, if Jamie Smith's coming in, I'd actually put Josh Buttler up at 3 and then bring that, put Harry Brook for Joe Root 4 and then bring Harry Brook and Jamie Smith further down. Just so that if required, Root can hold the innings together and then you've got Smith and Harry Brook. Obviously, you can have the charge on as well. But I'd put Buttler in at 3. I don't know what Nick has said about this, but that would be my opinion.
All right. You know, we're going to spend a little time. Yes, Nick, please.
Sorry, I think you've got to be flexible here. I'll take it a stage further. I don't think this will happen, but if it did happen in the match, say England batting and you had a brilliant opening partnership or a brilliant second wicket partnership, and then Joe Root is lined up to come in at number 4, and all of a sudden you're going past 28 overs, 29 overs, 30 overs. No, for me, Joe Root goes down the order at that point. Josh Buttler comes up. He goes in. So he goes to number 4. There's that element of flexibility, reading the game situation, rather than just, I don't know whether England will do it. They did it a little bit in the last game, hence my frustration. But you have to read the game situation. At that point, if you're 28, 29, ticking over 30 overs, and you're Afghanistan, you don't want Josh Buttler coming in. You know, so you manoeuvre your resources to the game situation. Let's see what happens in this game.
The last thing, we've gone on this for a while, but that's a very interesting point you make. Is Joe Root flexible enough to be dropped down the order, or does that not matter as much, Nick?
Well, I think the Jamie Smith thing has more impact. The Jamie Smith decision about him at 3 has more impact than Joe Root. Good thing for Joe Root, because where England are wary, and rightly so too, they don't want to, say Duckett or Stolt get out early and you're in overs 1, 2 or 3. It's not really Joe Root's style at that point to use the power play of 10 overs. So they're using Jamie Smith to sort of buff at that, and then it leaves Joe Root to command the middle overs. That's manoeuvring spin, getting off strike, keeping the ball ticking over. Joe Root and number 4 works with Jamie Smith going at 3. Where it doesn't work is Josh Buttler dropping down another place. He drops down further because Jamie Smith goes up. And hence my point, without wanting to go over the top with this, hence my point that England just have to be flexible with the game situation, not the numbers and the on your screen there.
All right. Well, that is for the cricketing chat. But this fixture in particular has plenty more about it than what we're discussing on field. So let's spend some time, because it has been the subject of conversation in cricket boards, in parliaments, in several countries, and now we have an England-Afghanistan game. Josh Buttler, the England captain, has spoken on the issue, and he's not the only voice from England or from international cricket that regularly reiterates what Afghanistan cricket has found itself in, with the Taliban government coming in, the effective dismissal of women's cricket over the last 2 or 3 years, and the potential measures that other teams can take to try and get to a world that we all would like to see, where Afghanistan's women's team is back in action at the highest level. Butler's words, says he was very saddened by the entire situation, credits the support that he got from the England Cricket Board, and simply has to make peace with the fact that he needs to play this on behalf of his team. They've been supporting the players, giving us information and education. There are calls for boycotting the fixture, and of course, Josh Butler's brought all of that up. Urooj, let's start this with you. It's a tough situation to be in, but I'm sure we all want the eventual outcome.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation to be in, because ultimately the buck stops with the board and whom is making that call. I think at an individual level, as players, just as a basic right thing to do, the Afghanistan women's cricket side should be playing cricket, and things should normalize and reform. And at an individual level or a team level, you could still boycott bilateral series completely. At an ICC event, I think things become larger than that. But I think what I like about what Josh has said, that there is more education and information on the matter. I think that is a start, because for a lot of boards and a lot of players across the board, it was an isolated issue, which it's not. And it should be by and large a topic of discussion, and in every board and every meeting across the players. And the more information you have, the more right decisions you can make. So at least the ball's gotten rolling, and I know a lot of people who are working in the right direction. And hopefully, like you say, Raunak, the right outcome will be achieved fairly soon.
Yeah, the curious thing is, what can boards or men's teams do to try and get to that stage, Nick? And when Urooj talks about, can you boycott an ICC event game? Well, it did happen, didn't it? And you were part of that squad in 2003. I think the Tony Blair government was very vocal about the Mugabe regime in Zimbabwe. England decided not to go to Zimbabwe. It led to significant sort of their blows of advancing in the 2003 World Cup. At that time, the priorities were made clear regardless of the stakes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It brings back some pretty dark memories, actually. We sat in a hotel room in Cape Town for a whole week, going through, wrestling with your emotions, wrestling with your thoughts, getting advice here and there. Nasser Hussain was our captain, who did a terrific job. I have to say, he was outstanding in his leadership of how we went through those meetings. It's a very difficult situation for the players. I have the utmost sympathy, stroke understanding, stroke knowing what they're going through, because on the one hand, politics meets sport. On the one hand, you're very aware that you are a sportsman and you're not a politician. But on the other hand, you're also very aware that you can't just dismiss it. You have a role to play within what is going on. And so that then becomes the difficult issue. The one difference, though, Raunak, in what happened in 2003 with us and Zimbabwe is there was a question mark over whether there was a credible security issue as well. And once that security issue became credible, then that did have influence on the outcome in terms of decision from the team. So there were a number of factors. I think in this instance, it's absolutely right that the game goes ahead. This game will bring great joy to the people of Afghanistan. That is for sure. I think the players themselves from both sides have dealt with the situation as well as you possibly can. I hope also that the awareness that has been generated from what has happened here will help the situation down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I want to bring up on this, Urooj, is the sentiment around will penalising the men's cricket team, who themselves don't necessarily have all the opportunities that some of the bigger nations do, actually be beneficial to the cause that we're all on the same page for. I think Jonathan Trott, the Afghan head coach, has shared just earlier today the players' sentiments, that they all know that this is wrong. Trott speaks of his own daughters who play cricket, so you can see where the sentiments of the players lie. They might very well be on the same page as us, and I'd like to assume that they are. And therefore, is this something that can still be put aside if teams decide that we need to set an example regardless of what the short-term effects are on the men's game?
Yeah, again, Raunak, a very, very difficult one because, like you're saying, by and large, the entire men's team, like you're saying, Jonathan Trott put into words as to what the sentiments of these the male team is. But by penalising them, will it work? Will it not work? We don't know. And is it really the right way to go? But if push comes to shove, it might be the way to go. That you stop all forms of cricket unless the women are allowed to play. At the moment, I think Nick makes a great point in terms of it being by and large a massive political situation and not just a cricketing decision, which makes things slightly more complicated. But it looks like a situation where I think ultimately it will come down to taking very strict measures for things to resolve, because at the moment I don't think steps are going to work unless some really, like you're saying, unless the men's team has to pay the price for it, which will be very unfortunate without any fault of their own.
And those last three words on your screen from the Afghan captain Hashmatullah Shaidi, we cannot control it, pretty much sums it up. It's left to the powers in politics and in the governing offices of the ICC and the boards to figure out. But let's just keep the conversation going. That's the best that we can do from our end, and make sure that we never forget that this is an issue that needs to be corrected sooner rather than later. Thank you for that, Urooj. Nick, we will just pivot our attention back to the game in front of us and try and talk a little bit about Mark Wood, given England are bowling first and Wood is supposed to be the X factor. There is still the common cricket fans' perception, Nick, that if you get flat pitches like you do in Lahore, Mark Wood is an X factor, 150 plus. He's supposed to break the game open. It's not quite happened with his recent bowling form.
No. I think his best chance of doing exactly that, I think England fans will feel will be in this game, and that's with no disrespect at all to Afghanistan's top order. I think the extra pace of Overton, the extra pace of Archer and Wood, as you're talking about, this is their moment to shine, really. This is their moment to back this, what is very one-paced attack. I'm not sure. In fact, I'm more than not sure. I think England are too one-paced, and I think if they get through this game and then South Africa becomes, I would urge England to relook at the balance of their side. But I think this is their opportunity. And with Mark Wood, inevitably you look at what happens with the new ball. You think that can he make a breakthrough, get 2 or 3 early wickets with Archer. But for me, where Wood's role is even more important is where it didn't quite work in the last game when Carey and Inglis were building that partnership. That's where you want your big, strong, fast bowler to come back in and break a partnership and break it back open again. Archer, Wood, et al. That is your real job for me, where the game needs to really make an impact on the game. England weren't able to do that. And that I really feel is crucial. And can England do that if it happens today? Can England do that if it happens against South Africa?
Yeah, let's breaking down the numbers to illustrate the point. Mark Wood, wonderful bowler that he is, has found it hard going in ODI cricket last couple of years. In fact, we're looking since 2019 to 2022, and you saw the difference Mark Wood had made in this England white ball side, in this ODI side. Averages in excess of 50, so is the strike rate, runs are on a high. Is this the game to correct that, given what we saw between South Africa and Rabada and the Afghan top order, Urooj?
Yeah, I mean, 12 wickets, 11 wickets, or less than 1 wicket apiece from your premium fast bowler with, like Nick is saying, the one guy who you throw the ball to break open the game, impact it every time he comes in with an X factor of bowling 150k. Probably not so much in terms of, again, the surface, because the margin of error on such flat tracks is very minimal. Nowadays, most teams are still acquainted and are familiarized to playing at higher pace, and when the higher pace is slightly amiss, Ibrahim Zadran and Ramana Gurbaz, I think, are two players at the top of the order who can actually handle that pace quite well. So I spoke to Jofra Archer earlier just before the start of the game, and he was right about it. It's about in the middle, like Nick also just said, when your quick bowlers come back, you want to break the game open, and that's where he also felt they didn't quite do enough in the game against Australia. So I think the two guys on the top for Afghanistan more than capable of handling that pace. But if they are to break that game open, then slight advantage to England because of that pace, and probably Afghanistan not having a flavor of that pace consistently when they practice.
Yeah, it seems like Afghanistan are reliant on Gurbaz significantly. Rahmanullah Gurbaz, Ibrahim Zadran, that opening pair, they don't quite have the same returns when Gurbaz and Zadran don't give them the great start that we expect them to. That's where the game is likely to be set early on in the first hour or so, Nick.
Well, I go back to what I said a minute or so ago. Yes and no. Yes, if England will expect to make early inroads, England will expect to use the short ball effectively. One of my critiques of England is I think once the short ball is done, in terms of perhaps not having the effect that they'd like, I think they've got to bowl more at the stump. So it'll be interesting whether plan A works, they go to plan B. But I expect quite a few short balls in this contest. Yeah, inevitably. I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, Gurbaz and Ibrahim Zadran have kind of bossed the situation for them. And Ramat Shah got runs in the last game, so he'll come in with a bit of confidence. But it's that middle order, that sort of top middle order, where you feel it is still very dependent on the top two. I mean, Omar Azai, for me, I've always been a massive fan of him. I think he underperforms. I think there's more in the tank from him. I still kind of feel that he can make a significant impact on the game. So they've got the players, Nabi experience. You know, they've got the players that can navigate their way through this paced attack, but they're going to have to play exceptionally well.
Yeah, that run rate that you saw, it's about 4.5 is the lowest for the top 10 teams. They wouldn't mind that so much because Rahmanullah Gurbaz averages over 61 batting first, batting second as they did against South Africa. Numbers drastically different where he's averaging just about 16. So a lot of things have happened in the way that Afghanistan would have wanted approaching this game. They won the toss, they're batting, and it's a must-win game. Let's get first innings score predictions from Urooj Mumtaz and Nick Knight. Urooj.
You're not giving me any prize for getting these right, Raunak.
I am waiting to see how many you get right, and then there'll be a prize.
Right, I'm gonna put Afghanistan down for 280, which might not be enough.
Nick Knight.
And I think assuming the conditions are the same as they were against Australia, I think they're going to need more. I think they're going to have to be sort of 280, somewhere around there, to be relatively competitive. I mean, obviously their strength will be with the ball in hand, so that's what they're looking at, getting runs on the board to put England under pressure. But I think it's going to have to be around 280. If they can get that as a minimum, then I think they'll feel very much in the contest.
You don't like predictions, do you, Nick? You're just trying to find your way.
I hate them. What about the last game? Somehow I got one off. I got 350 to 351.
You did. Anil wasn't taking it. He said you didn't qualify it clearly and with the same sort of punch that he would have liked.
Well, I can't imagine 350 somewhere. I'm going to cling on to it.
Well, anyways, Raunak's not giving us anything for these predictions. We're getting them right, so it's okay.
Not giving you anything yet. There's a car in the background, if you've noticed or not. So it's coming. It's coming. You get enough right, and the Maruti will find its way to you. We thank you very much, Urooj Mumtaz and Nick Knight. Let's pick up the conversation at the end of the game on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricket for Match Day.
How do I do it all? The Brezza gives me the power.